The City Council Committee on Ordinances, Licenses, and Legal Affairs, co-posted with the Committee of the Whole, met in the council chambers on Thursday, May 23rd, 2024 at 6:03 p.m. for the purpose of discussing several fee increases. Notice of this meeting was posted on May 17th, 2024 at 3:09 p.m. Tonight we have, lost my pen. Councilor Harvey has recused himself from this meeting. From the Committee of Ordinances, Licenses, and Legal Affairs, right now, Councilor Watson-Felt is absent, but she will be joining us. And from the Committee of the Whole, we have Council President Hapworth, Councilor Prosnewski, and Councilor Stott. Also joining us tonight, we have the Finance Director, Anna Friedman. We have John Giardi, the City Electrician. We have Fire Chief Dion. And we have Building Inspector Vula Orfanos. So before us, we have 3 items that we're going to talk about. Number 216 is an ordinance amending an ordinance relative to Chapter 12, Section 2, which is building, electrical, and plumbing regulations under the additions section. Number 217, an ordinance amending an ordinance relative to Chapter 14, Section 40, fees for granting permits and certificates by head of fire department. And number 218, an ordinance amending an ordinance relative to Chapter 12, building, electricity, and plumbing regulations, sections 163, 164, 165, relative to electrical fees. I think I'm going to start by having the 3 department heads come up and talk a little bit about the data that you've provided us with, thank you very much, and kind of your basis for increasing the fees. So if, Vula, if you want to start, just make sure that you speak right into the microphone so that everyone can hear.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for having me tonight. So I started with showing our increase in fees. The last time we increased the fees were in 2006 for any of our building permit fees. And it starts on the first page where I show our hourly salary rates with the inspectors, plumbing, building, and our clerks. And then it shows, you know, with all of the expenses that are tied into our regular hourly rates, what an hourly rate would cost for our team to take in permits. And then below it shows an average of each person if they're doing a review of a permit. We take in a permit, and it averages about 1 hour to a half an hour to an hour to 2 hours. It depends. It could be even multiple hours. It depends on the project, how big it is and how small it is. And then it breaks down the average. If you do like 3 hours, what would it cost if the commissioner did it, or the local inspector, or the clerk for their time to take in, to review the permit, to pass it along to the inspectors. And it shows what it costs hourly for that to be taken in consideration for a permit to go through. And then on the next page, it shows what our rates are now. For every 1,000, it's $7 for residential. And then for commercial, for every 1,000, we're $11. Our base fee, example, if someone had a project for $2,000, it would be $14 if it was residential, so we have a base fee of $25. So our base fee right now would not even cover our administrative hourly or the inspector to review or anything, so our fees, we're in like a deficit almost when we're doing a lot of the permits, the reviews, and then going to the inspections. And then below, I put a couple of permits. It'll show like a door permit, and it's for $14,000 is a project cost. And the fee, because you would take 14 times the 7, it's $105. So an average of 3 inspections to go out there, you know, they do a rough, and then we go back for a final, and then sometimes you might have to go back even a second or third time, depending on how the inspection goes. So, and then I break it down what the cost would be, you know, by the hourly rate, and then how much you're in deficit because you're not covering what it costs to do that permit. There's another one for roofing, solar panels, and windows. And it breaks down the time and hours. And there's just, giving it just a rough idea, because some permits could be, we have big projects, and I know there's more money coming in for the bigger projects, but some of them could take like a month review. It could take 2 months. Sometimes we section the reviews. It depends how big the project is. And those, you're definitely going out many, many times. Oh, I apologize, I spoke too. So on that, we haven't increased it since 2006. We'd like to increase for the residential to $15 per thousand, and then $20 per thousand on a commercial. So it's about 18 years that we've had any increases, so that's why it seems like a significant change, but it's justifiable if we had done annually, you know, with the increases incrementally. And then the base fee, if we can go to 75 instead of 25, which would assist in covering at least administration and then getting it to the inspector. And then on the last page, it shows with all the salaries and the expenses, what it costs us to run the department, and then the permit on the bottom, what we've brought in each year for the permit fees. And then you can see the 24, we're at $16.50, but then if you break down our hourly, how much it would cost us. So right now, it's costing us more to run the department than we're bringing in from permit fees.
Okay. Can you just give an indication, and I don't know, it's probably in here somewhere, but, so on page 2 of your write-up, you have some permit examples, the door, kitchen renovation, windows, and the cost. Do you have the new fee that you're going to charge for that?
So example, the door, the first one, it's $14,100. So if we increase, if it's a residential fee, it would be 14 times, if we go to the $15 that we're asking. It would be $14.15. I think, I didn't calculate it, I apologize, but 14 times 15, I think it was like $190 actually, it might have been.
So it's right in line with the approximate,
Yep.
the 306?
Exactly.
Okay.
Yep.
Perfect.
And even some of the fees, when I did the calculations, wouldn't even cover the time or the permit fee.
Right, okay.
Yep.
Okay. Are there any questions? Councilor Hapworth.
Thank you, Chair Marcillo, and thank you, Vula, for this. So for those watching at home, and for me, who didn't initially understand what this was when I hit the agenda, is it fair to say that this is allowing the, or this is, I guess, not putting the burden on the Salem taxpayer and putting the burden on the person who's applying for the permit?
Yes.
For what it costs?
Yes.
So this is just in line with...
Defer it from the taxpayers, yes.
Okay, so this is in line with what we're doing with tour guides, where we're saying that if there's a cost associated with something the city performs, it should be picked up by the person who's receiving that benefit, not by the Salem taxpayers.
Right.
Okay.
Exactly.
Thank you.
Councilor Cohen.
Thank you, Chair Marcillo. I used to live in this world a little bit, solar panels, so obviously roofing, and I'm going to say that these are comparably to other communities incredibly reasonable. There are a lot of communities who charge a lot more, and our departments are very flexible with the contractors, you know, if they can't necessarily proceed. So I'm going to move that we refer this to the full council with a positive recommendation.
Can we wait until we go through all the presentations and? Yeah. I'd rather
Okay,
do
so
it
I'm
that
just
way.
weighing in on this one. So
Okay, well, thank you. I'm glad that you're willing to move forward. And I will say, I take that, and I know that I think Mr. Giardi brought in what other towns are doing, and that's excellent. It's an excellent way to kind of judge how we're doing. But as you know, it's got to be based on our expenses. So that's where we're focused here. But it's good to look at other communities to see if we're in line. And we clearly were not in line before. So, yep.
I can confirm that, but I did it after we did our analysis, how we were running our department, and then reaching out to other departments. They did the same thing in analysis, and they did come up to a more sensible to be able to operate and not cost the taxpayers more money to have the department run.
Yeah. Anyone else for Ms. Orfanos? Seeing none. Who wants to be next? Fire Chief.
Thank you, Council.
Thank you.
Thank you, councilors. I'll tell you how I calculated my hourly rate to begin with, which was more challenging than I expected it to be. It's an unyielding amount of data to figure out what an hourly rate would be for an inspector, not just their own personal hourly rate, but as it relates to the expense that the city and the burden of the department deal with. So I basically calculated the fees, the salaries we pay the inspectors, the marshal, one of my deputies who does about 25% of his time in fire prevention, and also my clerk who does about 10 to 20% of her time on behalf of fire prevention. And I came up with a personnel cost for the department. After that, I added about $15,000 in overall expenses, and I went very conservative on that. I could go crazy on phone costs, telephones, tablets, cars, gas, all that. I just had to draw the line at some point. So I came up with an hourly rate as it cost the department just under $70, and I thought it was a little conservative at the number, so I felt the fees that I'm proposing are very much in line, considering I used a conservative dollar amount. My explanation sheet, which is your page 1, kind of explains all the weirdness that we deal with when we do permitting. As Vula said, we're oftentimes visiting these locations in the larger projects upwards of 15, 20 times. How do you assign a value to that? I mean, you can't get a permit. Ours don't work like theirs does on dollar value. It just doesn't apply that way in the fire service. It applies basically fixed fees for fixed permits. The idea of going back 20 times on a project of 30,000 square feet and 60 units, I think that's reasonable, but the idea of going back 5 or 6 times to a 2-family house because they just continually aren't in compliance is not reasonable. In the future, I'd like to visit the idea of possibly limiting the amount of times we go to places that are not complying, and then they'll have to reapply, but that's not for tonight. The fees we came up with, I think they're more than in line with our region. I took communities that we resemble in demographic and population density. So I didn't look at Beverly or Peabody. I looked at towns like Somerville and Cambridge, who we resemble with our population density and our demands and our buildings and the like. And I also looked at some that would lean more conservatively. And I think the proposal here is quite in line with all of them. To look at the sheet that I provided with you, to you, on all the items, I listed an hour estimation. I used that to figure out roughly the average amount of hours, and that's how I calculated the fee we charge. In some cases, the hourly rate would calculate much higher, but I just wanted to get to a baseline so I could come up with the calculations. I'm not going to go over each one individually unless you'd like me to. I know you have a meeting at 7. And I don't think anybody's going to argue with me. But I struck out the ones below, and the new fees are above. So I have to clarify, I think our fees changed the same time as building and electrical in the area, 2006 and 7 or 8. I'm assuming Mayor Driscoll initiated that back then. Our department, the fees were never changed in the ordinances. So you can see that there's quite a discrepancy in the fees that I've struck out and then the fees that we'll be charging. And it doesn't properly denote what we're raising the fees on. It's a little misleading. I assure you it was on average $10 to $15 per fee. And on the larger ones, we recalculated how we're doing things. Instead of charging $100 for a building 5,000 to 55,000 to 125,000 square feet, we broke it down into areas where the larger buildings, the fees will be significantly increased. Therefore, justifying the time and expense we encounter when we send these inspectors there over and over again. Mm-hmm. I'll use the bricks as a perfect example. That's a gigantic project. They should pay a lot more for fees. Mm-hmm. So with that in mind, I feel like there's not a lot of significant increases. There's change and there's new structure, but basically the fees were increased minimally.
Okay.
That's how I perceived it.
Yeah. Okay. Councilor Cohen.
Thank you, Chair Marcillo, through you to the Chief. I just have a question on the installation and removal of storage tanks, LP gas, and then you have underground and above ground.
You have a page, Counselor? Because I think
Page 2 out of 4,
2 out of 4, okay.
and it goes on to the next page.
Yeah.
The question isn't actually about the cost, it's about the actual work, because I'm assuming that some of these would be like an oil tank that's storing oil
Yeah.
for their boiler or whatever.
Back in the late 70s, early 80s, we removed almost every underground tank in America, or in Massachusetts, to be specific. All the gas stations, they had to redo their tanks because we found out we were poisoning the world. In that same light, there's still tanks underground. For example, my mother-in-law lives in a house up off of Cloverdale, and their oil tank is under the front lawn.
Right.
And when they go to sell, they'll have to take that out. So this is what those fees would apply. We take very, very few tanks out of the ground anymore.
So-
It's not happening on a regular basis.
So even the ones, because some of these are for above ground, which would be like in someone's basement or something.
Yep.
And so my question is this, because I know, from when like heat pumps are installed or whatever, and they take them out, because the new law, to get the rebates, it used to be that you could leave the old heat source in there as an emergency.
Yeah.
But now you have to actually remove the old tank. And so I'm actually thinking this is cheap because I'm worried about companies that are not doing it right, because there's very few companies, as you know, that can actually do it and handle the hazardous part properly, and not all of them are in Massachusetts. So is this something where you would like automatically go back and make sure that they remove the lines and it wasn't like stuff leaking?
If we inspected, they wouldn't finish and pass their inspection until the site was remediated. That'll include pulling the copper lines out of the floor if they're buried, making sure the tank is opened and cleaned, and then we need to see where the oil went when they dispose of it. That's all part of our final sign-off. And then they'll disclose to us, yeah, the oil went to place A, B, or C. Usually it's a waste oil company that can burn the oil efficiently in a burner and handle the sludge and that type of stuff. And then once that's established that it's all good, then we're good to go. If there was a leak or anything like that in the then we're kind of just the reporting authority at that time. It would be referred to the DEP, and they would take care of it from there on. They would continue with the observation, the fines, the testing, the remediation. So there is a limited obligation on our part once the tank has been remediated, and there's almost no involvement once there's a contamination of the property. DEP takes over.
Okay. Anyone else? I do want to do a little bit of bookkeeping. We were joined several minutes ago by Councilor Watson-Felt from the committee and Councilor Varela from the Committee of the Whole. And we've also always had Chief of Staff Lisa Peterson. And we're now joined by Beth Renard, the city solicitor. I think I have everybody covered now. Okay. Any other questions for the fire chief before he sits down? Seeing none. Mr. Giardi.
Madam Chair, lady. Thank you, councilors. Okay. We do electrical inspections in regards, and we also do traffic lights and fire alarm.
Can you speak right into the mic? Sorry.
Sorry? Okay, I gotta just lower that then, okay. Excuse me. So we calculated our figures going back to 2008, like the chief and Vore said, okay, in regards to our man-hour cost and the time to do our inspections, which average anywhere from 15 minutes on the small ones, it could be an hour, 2 hours, like when we're working on the larger buildings. And we've deleted blanket permits because that was not in the scope of things that should be in the scope of things, because when the people are doing blanket permits, they don't report all the work that they're doing in the buildings that they're doing. And we have no way of knowing how much work they're doing, how much we should be charging for it. So we deleted that section, which is in red in one of the handouts. So then we came over to the current proposals and the new proposals, okay? Did I give you, everybody that handout in regards to the permit?
They'll have it, yes.
Okay. So the minimum fee for any type of work was $15, way too low. It's not even worth us going out for that amount of money. Because, we have the vehicles, we have the insurance. We included all the factors, basically, how much it would cost to perform an inspection. So we raised the minimum fee, not too much, $30. We stayed with the local fee for $3 per thousand on a building valuation. And then we went from burners, oil burners, gas burners, we went from $15 to $30, okay, which is not huge. It's, like I said, it doesn't even cover the cost of us going out there at $30 an hour, Our guys are making $30. One of the guys is making 28. So by the time you justify the cost, it doesn't justify. And electric signs, we did a little increase. Additional meters, a little increase there, $5. Then we went to services, which require a lot of time involved. Like when we get a 200 amp service, the laws have changed a lot between the arc fault circuit breakers and the ground fault circuit breakers and the grounding electrodes, which actually grounds the whole house. So it takes quite a bit of time to go through those. And we went to, okay, larger. So then we got up to the 800 amp service, which you can see is if you go down like $250, then we'll go to page 2. Fuses to circuit breakers. Then we went HVAC systems. With 35, we went to 50. So we increased them minimally to make it worth the city's while, but not to burden the people doing the work and the taxpayers. And vendors' use on the common, that didn't change, as far as like the cost of that. And we had certificates of occupancy. That what happens is with that is when the people leave an apartment, the Board of Health will go in and they'll inspect it. And if they ask us to assist them, we do it. So they get a clean bill of health. So the next person, if they cause any damage, the building department and the health department understands, what happened, who's at fault. Okay. And that's basically about it.
Okay. Any questions from anyone? Councillor Cohen.
Thank you again, Chair Marcillo, through you to Mr. Giardi. You have installation of generators.
Yes.
Does that also include like batteries for solar panels, or is that with the building inspector?
Yeah, there is a fee for solar panels down there somewhere.
So the reason I ask is because the law changed a year ago where if someone gets a battery for solar panels, like a power wall or something, that they now are required to surround it with a 5-inch.
2-hour fire rating. Yep.
Yeah. Is that with you, or was that with?
That's building. We look for
building?
that too. Both of us look for that. Yeah.
Okay, so that's good. I just didn't know if that's like part of the generator fee. And regarding solar panels, so was there no charge before? Was that all part of the one permit that was received?
Yes, there was a general permit, and then so we imported that one into the.
Okay, but you're adding something here at the where it says new permit titles. The reason I'm asking about the
Yes.
solar is because I'm not saying the building doesn't do a lot of work, but most of the work is the electric work.
Right.
You know what I mean? And making sure that it's tied into the.
We do a test, we make them do a rapid shutdown test, which Jeff understands.
Yeah.
And what that consists of is that we make the person operate the system, and it's supposed to drop down to like 10 or 12 votes, like if you're doing a rapid shutdown within so much time.
But I know, like with Mr. Racone or whatever, that you guys generally have to go for a second visit to make sure that they did the line side tap or whatever correct?
Yes,
Right?
that's correct.
So I'm just asking if this is enough to cover those additional visits.
Yes,
Okay.
yes. Thank you. That's a good question, yeah.
Anyone else?
Be happy to answer any questions.
Okay. All right, so thank you.
Thank you very much.
So like I said, we have three orders in front of us for the different sections. If we start with the ordinance to amend Chapter 12, Building, Electric, Plumbing Regulations, and it starts Section 1, Additions. It doesn't sound like there's any questions on those edits. Okay. I will take a motion. Counselor Cohen,
I'm getting laryngitis. I was hoping someone else would jump in.
let's move this along.
I move that we refer this to the council with a positive recommendation.
Counselor Cohen moves that we refer this to the council with a positive recommendation for first passage, seconded by Counselor Watson-Felt. All those in favor? The motion carries 4-0. We have number 217, an ordinance amending an ordinance relative to Chapter 14, Section 40, and it's the fees for granting permits and certificates by head of fire department. Counselor Cohen.
Thank you, Chair. I move that we refer this to the full council with a positive recommendation for first passage.
Seconded by Counselor Watson-Felt. All those in favor? The matter carries 4-0. And then we have number 218, an ordinance amending an ordinance relative to Chapter 12, Building, Electric, and Plumbing Regulations, Section 163, 164, 165, relative to electrical fees. Counselor Davis.
I move that we recommend this to the full council with a positive recommendation for first passage.
Seconded by Counselor Watson-Felt. All those in favor? All those opposed? The matter carries 4-0. Anything else before we let these department heads go? Seeing none. Counselor Davis.
I move to adjourn.
Counselor Davis moves to adjourn. All those in favor? The matter carries 4-0. Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you for being here. Great presentations.